Hello, today we're going to look a little bit more at investing money, and more specifically, we are going to be focused on mutual funds and bonds. They are not as scary as they sound, I promise, and the formulas we're going to use are pretty easy. Once again, I'm going to assume you've read through the notes, so I'm just going to dive right into the example problems. Martin invested $25,000 in the Jennison Dryden Utility Mutual Fund Type A. The net asset value is $15.59 per share. The fund is front-loaded with a loading rate of 5.80%. They're asking us to find the two things, loading charge and how many shares did Martin buy. Let's start with loading charge. Loading charge is going to be the loading rate. This is given as a decimal, so remember we need to switch that decimal to a percent to a decimal by taking the decimal place and moving it 2 places to the left. So that would become 0.058 or 0.0 times 580, whatever makes sense for you, times the amount invested. He invested $25,000. So let's use Desmos for that. And we end up with $1,450 for the loading charge. So that takes care of that part. To find the number of shares, the formula we use is right here. It's the amount invested, which was $25,000, minus the loading charge, $1,450, all over the net asset value per share, which is in the problem. That's the $15.59 per share. So we're going to divide that by $15.59. We can do that all in Desmos in one step. First, use your division key to make a fraction, and then type in everything where it goes. You're going to get a decimal, and that's okay. We're just going to round to the nearest tenth. He has purchased 1,510.6 shares when we round that to the nearest tenth of this mutual fund. Usually we don't think of partial shares for mutual fund. Partial shares are possible, so that's okay. And then next up, again, I'm going to assume you've read all of this. Let's just jump into what the formulas look like for mutual funds. The formulas you will need are right here. George purchases a Ford fund, which is a $1,000 bond at the quoted price of 89.5. The bond pays interest at a rate of 6%. We are finding three things. First is the interest, which is annual interest. Annual interest is the face value, or how much is the bond, $1,000 bond, times the interest rate. Once again, I'm going to take my percent and turn it into decimal form. 6% is the same as 0.06. And when we multiply that, you can use Desmos if you'd like, or you can do this in your head. We get $60 for the interest. Next up is the cost of the bond. Bond cost is the face value. So once again, whatever the amount we say for the bond is, times the percent. That's the quoted price, which is right here. This is the same as 89.5%. But remember, 89.5% in decimal form would be 0.895, like so. So let's do that in Desmos, or you can do it in your head. When we do that, we get $895. That is how much the bond costs. Last but not least, the annual yield. The annual yield is going to be the annual interest over the bond cost. So we are just dividing the two amounts we found. Interest was 60, bond cost is $895. Do that division. I would strongly recommend a calculator for that. We are going to get a decimal, but remember that decimal represents a percent. If I move that decimal place 2 places to the right, I get 6.70% as the annual yield. Anytime we're dealing with yield, that's a percent, so go ahead and switch your answer into percent form. In Canvas, that'll be fairly obvious for you because you'll have a percent sign near your answer. That is it for our quick and dirty introduction to mutual funds and bonds. Have a wonderful day.